Welcome to the fastest stuff in town. Today we'll check this Menachot stuff Yud Ches. We're going to begin about 7 lines from the top. Rabbi Yehuda l'haniach medamai l'machar diber kol pasol. So we were learning in our new parak that there's an opinion of Rabbi Lezer with regard to a person who has the machshava during the time of Kemitza, that they're going to eat something in which is not supposed to be in, namely the kamitza, and he had an improper machshava of chutz l'zman, chutz l'mekaymai, or for that matter, to be makter the shirayim, which is usually not, when we are not makter that, we eat it. In that case, it's not considered to be pigul according to the opinion of the chachamim. However, the Rebbe Lezer is paisel. And we were wondering, is it based on a din deraisa? Because we quoted a pasuk, and if it is im ha'achal ya'achal, then perhaps there's a chiv kares as well, if you would eat it. However, we said perhaps it's actually only a gzer d'Rabbanan, and on this we said gimel machlokas b'davar. And one thing that was mentioned is that when it comes to a person who has a machshava l'haniach midamo l'machar, to leave some of the blood tomorrow. So Rabbi Yehuda's poisel, and it says Rabbi Lezer apazu Rabbi Lezer poisel machshir. Actually, it's seemingly it's a machlokas. Now we did mention that we know apparently, as Rabbi Yehuda mentions, yatem moidimli. You must agree. Shim haniach l'machar shapasel. If your machshava was to leave all the kohen says, I'm not doing the zrika, I'm leaving all the blood for tomorrow. So that certainly doesn't work because it has to be done on that day. You can't leave it over, and therefore you didn't do zrika on any of the blood. So therefore, if you're chishav haniach l'machar nami pasel, so then that situation also when it comes to a machshava, it makes sense. If you leave some, it's a machlokas. And now the question is, what happens if it's the whole thing? So, so the question is it that there is a machlokas, or do we say when it comes to all the dam, it's davar pashtit, then of course you should say that that machshava will passel. However, the question is, if we're geyser otu, this is only mid damai, you want to leave some of it. So the question is, are you geyser mixas otu kuloi? So Sabra Bihudel haniach medamlo machar diber kol pasol. Is it really true that he holds that according to everyone that it should be pasol in that situation when you're leaving some of it? Vasanya Omer Rabbi said kishalachti Mrs. Midaisi, when I was going to clean out my measurements, Eitzel Rabbi Lezer ben Shemua, V'yarmul Asam says L'mitzvos Midaisav Shel Rabbi Lezer ben Shemua. So Rashi says Lumaid Mitzvos Mash Rabbi Lezer Chacham Mimani. So maybe it's actually to learn from him, etc. Matzasi Yosef Habavli Yoshel V'fana V'haya Chaviv Lo B'Yoser is a great person. Ad La'achas, until one of these particular halachas, says Rashi, V'haya Chaviv Yosef or Rabbi Eliezer, and he got to one halacha. Armalo Rebbe Hashaykhet Desa Zavach. It says that if you shech the carbon lahaniach in order to leave mid damo from some of its dam, lamachar mahu, which is basically what we're talking about. What a coincidence. Armalo kosher. Now this is pretty amazing. So he says, so Arvis Armalo. So I asked him again the same question, and Armalo kosher. He said it's kosher. Shachar Armalo kosher. Sarayim Armalo kosher. He kept asking him the same question. He kept saying it's kosher. Mincha Armalo kosher el Rabbi Lezer poisel. So he says, actually, you're right. It's kosher, as I've always said, but there's a shita of Rabbi Lezer that disagrees. So tzov upon him shel Rabbi Yosef Habavli. His face started to shine. Out of joy, Rashi says, machmas simcha. Armalo Yosef kimedumani it seems to me shaloi chivani shemoisenu ad ata. It wasn't clear my thoughts until now. So the whole notion of to clean out my measurements is really just an expression to figure out his learning, like to kind of like be masader of his learning. So Amula Rebbe Hain, you were clear. Ella Rabbi Yehuda Paisel, Rabbi Yehuda Shanali. I learned that actually Rabbi holds in this situation it's possible if you say lahaniach your machshava at the time of shchita sazavach is lahaniach medam lamachar. So I thought Rabbi Huda says it's possible. The chazarti al kol talmudov. I went back to all of my studying. Uvikashti li chaver v'lo matzasi. I didn't find anything. Achshav shishanisili psul. Now that you mentioned the Rebbe Lezer holds it's possible, hechzartali avedasi. You actually, it's ki'ilu, like you have returned that which was lost. Zolgo einav demois. So his eyes were filled with tears. So Rebbe Lezer ben Shmuel, Amar Ashreichem Talmidei Chachamim Shedivrei Torah Chavivan Aleihem B'Yoser. That a Talmud Chacham's learning is so chaviv to them. Kral of Mikra Zen, he called upon him this following pasuk: Ma'al havti torasecha. How much I love your Torah. Kol yamim hi sichasi b'gaimer. It's constantly in my mouth, and I'm constantly speaking it. So ha mipnei Rabbi Yehuda ben Oshel Rabbi Eloi. All of this was because Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Eloi, Rabbi Eloi, Talmid Shol Rabbi Eliezer, because they were linked. Right, because Rabbi Yehuda, he says Rabbi Yehuda's paisel. I always thought Rabbi Eliezer was the one who said that, but they're all connected to each other. Says Rashi, Hamash Maloshin Tam Kalemer Harmimnesha Rabbi Yehuda Ben Noisha Rabbi Eloi Talmid Shol Rabbi Eliezer. So we see this link as is brought down the second paragraph of Masechta Sukkah. Maser Rabbi Eloi Shahalach Kabba Bnei Rabbi Eliezer, etc. Lafikach Shanalacha Mishas Rabbi Eliezer. That's the reason why. I thought it was, again, the Shita of Rebbe Eliezer that said this. So anyway, if you want to say that everyone holds your puzzle, asnuya amidasi. So what does it mean that you have returned that which I have lost? You plukta karmele. We see clearly it is a machlokas, and it's not Divrei Koil. My kosher Rebbe Lezer pasul paisel asni yihachi maiha. So maiha mipnei plugda ananami plugda kamas nisan. I also learned it was a machlos elul oilam divrei kol pasul asni. I really learned it was according to everyone that says it's pasul. Machazartli medase dahadule miyashum paslus beoilam. Says Rashi. Rabbi Yehuda kosher or Rabban Rebbe Lezer paisel im kain my makam maiha mnei damashmim mnei shechaviva of shanav shahalacha kain he ha nanami divrei Rebbe Lezer ben Shmuel pluta. Okay, all right. Weiter. So the idea is that at least he sees that someone says it's possible, even though it's divrei kol possible, but that's a good start. That's the idea. Okay. Next Mishnah. Let's say you didn't put apparently any oil, but we're going to see this is not the case. It's only you didn't put the final pouring of oil into the mincha. A little bowl, wasn't mixed. We'll see why that's okay. A little pisas, you didn't crumble it up. A little malach, and then add salt. A little hinif, didn't wave it. A little higish. Pizza son pitim arubos. The pieces are very big. A little mashchan, and you didn't put anoint it, put oil into it. Ksher. Okay. So let's look at Rashi. There's a lot of Rashi on this. So first of all, when it talks about adding oil, pouring oil, hainu yitzika chreina. It means it's only kosher if all you didn't do was the last one. There's actually 3 times we put in oil. The b'techila nice and shemen b'kli. The first thing you do is put oil into the kli. V'yachach soilus, you put in the flour or boil it, then you mix it up. The chayz v'yosek shemen, and then you put in oil again. So it's just talking about how you didn't put in the oil the last time, but certainly there had to have been oil there before. Okay, that's one. Lul bol kosher, v'kagoyin shenosin kol halug b'matan harishain, shehu kaidim li'asiyasa di chisar shemana psula. So if you actually are missing oil, it's puzzle. It just means, we're going to see what it means. Okay, lopitate, it wasn't crumbled. Shnemer pachis pitot otam pitim. You're supposed to break them down into little pieces. Okay, lo hanif, which is referring to the minchas ha'omer, or the minchas kanais that require tenufa. So there's certain menachos that require tenufa, including a minchas omer and minchas kanais. Okay, if you didn't bring it close to the doraimis moravis, to the southwestern corner, and then finally it says pissa, that you crumbled it. Rashi says kofel echel l'shnayim v'shnayim l'dalad. You have to do 2 to 4, you have to double it, and then another. V'lo mashchan, but you didn't anoint it with oil. Oisen hatu'unos mishicha. Only those that would require anointing with oil. V'kiki matzah b'shachim b'shemen. Again, depending on what the pasuk says. So my li yisoik, what does it mean that you didn't apply oil? You didn't add any oil. You have to. El yisoik kayin. Maybe it means that the kayin didn't do it. Elazar. So referring to a non-kayin. Hachi lo bol nami lo bol kayin elazar. That means that it means that it was mixed. It was mixed by a non-kayin. So ha lo bol klal psula, which is mashman. If you didn't mix it at all, it's possible. That's not true. You don't have to mix it at all. As we see on Amid Beis, a very famous Gemara. Again, obviously it's a Menachot, but it's brought down in so many places. But Tanan, shishim nivlolim, shishim echad nivlolim. So if you have 60 measures of flour, that is the maximum to be able to physically be able to mix it up. If it's 61, it's too much. Therefore, you have to put it into 2 different kalim. Bavinba, I don't understand. Ki enim nivlolim ayhavi. Who cares if you don't mix it up? But nan lubol kshera. Even if you didn't mix it up, it's still kosher. The famous Gemara, the Amar Zera kol haroi labila ein bila makeves boy. If it doesn't have to be done, but it has to at least be fit to potentially be mixed. Anyway, the question is that we see when it comes to bila, you don't even have to do it. Our answer is midi area hakadisa v'hakadisa. What does that have anything to do with it? Right? So it's true. We see by mixing, it isn't ma'akev. It needs to be fit, not too much flour to mix. But if you didn't, it's still kosher. So you can't. So the answer is hakadisa hakadisa. Maybe again when it comes to mixture, it has to be fit. When it comes to yisoik, it just means lo yisoik kayin elazar. A non-kohen did it, right? That's what it's referring to. And when it says lo bol nami lo bol kayin elazar, non-kohen did it. Okay, so where it says lo yisoik kayin elazar, lo bol klal, it means, this is the maskana. It means that when you didn't mix it, it means it was mixed. But when it comes to be pouring the oil, the yitzoik, that is specifically referring to a kayin. Okay, yitzoik kashera hech kashera v'hoikubik sibe. So the answer is yitzoik kayin elazar. That's what it's referring to. As opposed to mixing, it means it wasn't done at all. It's TA27, which is the same question as TB30. All right, pretty clean, straightforward question. So, im yitzika belila upsisa ma'akvin. So, yitzika upsisa. So this only says yitzika and belila. Belila has sarach liyos roy labila ve'in beila makeves, right? And when it comes to Yitzika, right? Yitzika is, we're talking about Lo Yisa Kayin Elazar. That's what it's referring to. So if a non-Kohen does it, right? So then it's actually okay, right? That's what we're saying, right? That's what our Mishnah means. It doesn't mean it wasn't done. It has to be done because it's ma'akev, but if a non-Kohen does it, it's still okay. All right. Yitzika v'kamitzahim kashrus bizarre. So we just saw Yitzika is actually, it's not so posh. It's going to be a machloka. So let's keep going. So even though it seems to be, it's allowed to be done by a gazar. So oy shapasa piti maruba is kshera. So if they're big pieces, it's kosher. So hashda pasas klal. If you didn't break it up at all, it's kosher. Pitin marubas maboy. So obviously if they're big pieces. So my pitin marubos shariba bipasisin. You crumbled it actually too small. It's still fine. The boy say oilam pitin marubos. They're big pieces. Mamish umahudatema hasam hudaika taris chalas aleim. It still has the law of consider has the name of challah. Avol hacha, if it's too big, the lo taris chalas doesn't have the name of that ika. The lo taris basisin ika. It's like this middle ground, right? So Kamash 1, you would think that, again, maybe it's not good. Kamash 1, it's okay. If you have a kohen that's not moida bi'avoida, so basically he doesn't believe in the thing, it can't be a kohen. Shnemer hamakriv es dam, hashlomev es chelav mibnei Aharon, lo siyesh, shaykayamin lamana. Fine. It's only if he actually believes in Hashem and all this, then he can have a chelak. I only know these items. How do we know that when it comes to the other 50 avodos that he must believe in Hashem and he has to believe in all this stuff? So the main one is Hayasikais. So we see with a kohen pouring the oil on the flour. So we see Yitzhak does require kohen, not a zar, which it seems like not like our Mishnah. Blilos mixing it, Basis is breaking it up, Malichos adding salt, and it was waving it. Again, as we saw, certain minchas require. Vahagashais, bring it close to the southwestern corner. Vakamitzais, Vaktairis, burning the kamitza, Vahamalikais, which of course is the maliko with the birds, v'kabalois, v'hazois, sprinkling v'hashkas saita, the din of the sota, v'arivas egla rufa. When it comes to an unknown murder, we measure to the closest one. V'taris mitzaira, the process of being matara mitzaira. Nesias kapayim, when it comes to nesias kapayim, bein mibifnim bein b'mechutz. So as Rashi says, Nesis Kapayim de Bifnim B'chutz Chada Chashavle. That's actually considered like one, and to add up to the 15. Talmud Lemer Mibnei Aharon Avoida Tamasur Lebnei Aharon Kol Koyin Sheino Moidaba Eno Chel B'Kahuna. So basically, it's saying that it has to be something which the Bnei Aharon does. So here's the question: it's mashma pretty clearly, unlike our Mishnah, that when it comes to hayasikais, when it comes to pouring the oil onto the flour, that it is necessary to be done by a kohen. So Rav Nachman Ukasha kan b'minchas kohanim, kan b'minchas Yisrael. So we actually are going to try to make a distinction between if it's a mincha of a kohen or of a Yisrael. So minchas Yisrael, the bas kamitza, what do you mean? If it's a mincha of a Yisrael, it requires kamitza. And a kamitza ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. We know that when it comes from Kemitza on, only a Kohen can do it. Limid al yitzika b'lila shikasher b'zar, which is mashma, anything that was done before is kosher with a zar. So that's the din. When it comes to Minchas Yisrael, because you do Kemitza, because some of it is eaten by the Kohanim and the rest of it's burned, so therefore because of that, all the stuff before is kosher by a zar. Minchas Kohanim, the labas Kemitzahi, when it comes to the mincha of the Kohen, because it's all completely burnt, right? So mi'ikara boy kahuna. So the whole thing requires kahuna, and therefore that could be a distinction. So Amli Rabba Michli, 1 second. Minchas kohani mehechis Rabbi liatzika. How do we know that there is any din of putting oil onto a minchas kohanim? Minchas Yisrael. So ma hasam ksher bazar av hachanami ksher bazar. Right. So apparently even by a kohen. So ikadi amri yomer Rab Nachman lo kasher kan benik matzois kan b'shein nik matzois. So it could all be totally on whether it's something which has kamitza or not. So if there's kamitza, so before that it's okay. So Amrli Rabba Michti She'enik Matzos Meheches Rabbi Liyitzika. How do we know? It's basically the same idea, it's just a different language. How do we know when it comes to things like the Minchas Kayin, which there is no kamitza, that you still have to put oil onto it? We learn it Minik Matzos. So therefore, Kenemik Nasais Mahasam Ksher Bazar of Hachanamik Ksher Bazar. Ella Machverta Mastisa Rav Shimon. So therefore, actually, we see it is actually a machlokas. Okay, so my time to Rabbanan. Omer Rabbi Yisak leha shemen v'nas leha lavaina v'via el bnei Aaron hakayin v'kametz. So we see mekamitz v'elach mitzvahs kahuna limad al yitzika b'lila shekasher. So we see from here limad al yitzika b'lila shekasher bazar Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon, so that's it. So therefore we see taketz machlokas. When it comes to yitzika, it's kosher bazar. Of course, kamitza is possible bazar, but it's actually a machlokas when it comes to yitzika. Okay. Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon, b'nei Aharon, when it talks about the b'nei Aharon, so again, Rabbi Shimon says that it is not kosher bazar, so he's chaylik with our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Shimon, like we actually saw also in the beginning of this Masechta. Interestingly enough, on Daf Beis, we also found a Mishnah not like Rav Shimon. The next Mishnah was like Rav Shimon, so it's kind of like dicey when we hold the Mishnah is like him or not. So Rav Shimon, B'nei Aaron HaKohanim Mikra Nidrash L'fanav Acharam. What does that mean? So the pasuk, when it talks about it, is coming to include even things that are before it, which means even things such as the pouring of the oil onto the mincha includes that as well, because Rav Shimon is darish before and after. Ad kan.